Good morning, everyone. Hello. Thanks for coming. So my name is Larisa Zimmerman, and I'm the owner of a company called Peregrine Relocations. We do tenant relocations within the state of Oregon. And I'm here today with Dave McCabe and Mel Shea. Dave was the manager of Chaucer Court, which is a historic building in downtown Portland. And Mel Shea was with Community for Positive Aging. Thank you. Yes, both of them are no longer with those companies, but we had a really successful project together. So when I was thinking about like what kind of a presentation I wanted to try and give this year, I was like, you know, this was our favorite project. Let's do this. So we're doing it. Here we are. Also, John Ross in the lower right corner there, he is out sick today, but he will be joining us via Zoom from his garage. So you can look forward to that. This is going to be just kind of a casual conversation between us. I'm going to be MC, ask some questions. We've got about 10 slides to look at, and we're going to walk you through how our project went, what things made it a success, and hopefully these will be good takeaways for you in your own projects, your own organizations. We're just trying to be helpful. And if you have questions, hold them till the end. There will be a slide. It says questions on it. But until then, we're just going to ask each other questions. So thank you. Okay, so next slide, please. Oh, back one. Hello, welcome. Exclamation point. So Peregrine Relocations has been doing relocations based out of Portland for 10 years. As of last Monday, we had our 10-year anniversary party, and we were very excited about that. I was mentored into this work along with my coworker, John Hartog, who's standing in the back of the room handing out tote bags and such, by a woman named Martha Geese, who also acted as a bit of a mentor for Dave McCabe here. She's a local writer and civil rights activist, and she used to do a thing for Northwest Pilot Project where she compiled all of the low-income housing in the city limits and had just like a resource guide. And in the 90s, when buildings started getting flipped, subsidized housing would get turned into condos and sold to yuppies, and people were getting kicked to the curb. She got asked by Northwest Pilot Project to do some permanent relocations. About 15 years into that, she got tired of it and wanted to retire and asked if I would be interested in learning how to do it. And I said, sure. And that was the first temporary relocation she did. So we did that one together. And then I've just kind of been doing this work ever since. So this work that we did at Chaucer Court falls under the category of what I call construction support. We don't only do relocations. Sometimes a building needs to be rehabbed and it's, say, just getting the windows replaced. And all that construction is asking for is a 3-foot clearance on the side of the window. And so these would be occupied rehabs, and I've had conversations, particularly with the HUD San Francisco office, about how much they dislike occupied rehabs. We have worked some occupied rehabs. We did one with Mel Shea. It was a nightmare. We did what we could to try and ease people's very uncomfortable situations. But in this case, I got a phone call from Dave, and he was like, we need to replace the elevator in our building. And I said, wow, I've never done that before. And not replace the elevator, but support a building where the elevator is being replaced. So next slide, please. Okay, Dave, why don't you tell us about the panic you felt when you learned that this project needed to take place?
Okay, sure thing. The Chaucer Court, downtown Portland, 83 units, and it's a subsidized Section 8 property, a lot of longtime residents, and the building used to be the Grand Oddfellows Lodge for all of Oregon. And sometime in the 80s, it was turned into senior housing. And they did a remodel, and there used to be 2 elevators. During the remodel, they removed one of these service elevators because it was really small and wasn't really intended for people to use anyway. And there's only 1 elevator in the entire building for seniors. It's a 6-story property. And this elevator was getting up towards the end of its service life. And we have to replace the elevator because we need a working elevator. But what do we do in the meantime when we get through this project where there's no elevator and you have elderly folks who have to get out of the building? So this was it was a scary situation, and it was sort of dropped in my lap by the owner of the property management company I work for. And we had to think really creatively to figure this out. Oftentimes with Section 8 remodels, there's funding. HUD will support relocation. In this instance, that wasn't happening. And it had the work, any sort of support we had for the tenants had to come out of our budget. So we couldn't just wholesale relocate residents out of the building for this project. The elevator company, we paid for expedited service to have the elevator replaced. And even with this, extra money we're paying for the workers to work overtime, so it was going to be 6 weeks with no elevator and for these residents who, if they pretty much all take the elevator, they rarely take the stairs. And so we had to come up with solutions for this.
And Dave, one of the brilliant things, in my opinion, that you kind of immediately did was develop a needs assessment. So you did a questionnaire, made sure that every single tenant in the building responded to it. And tell us a little bit about what was on that questionnaire and what the results looked like.
Sure. What was on the questionnaire? There were we sent out a survey, and there were questions like, are you able to take the stairs? The one thing that building did have in its favor is has a really beautiful staircase, 1920s marble, very gracious, because it's not super steep, and however, like, are you able to do it? And then we graded these questions, maybe 1 through 6. I absolutely can't take the stairs. I can if I have to, if it's an emergency. And so there were a lot of questions along those lines. And we got all that information, tabulated it, and then because this, and then I was looking around for, has this, there's got to be some instance where this has happened before with other properties, and I could find nothing. I couldn't find any example of where they had done a rehab where the residents had to live on site without an elevator, and it's a senior property. Here's an example. We had a resident who lives on the 4th floor, and I don't know if you remember, but it was in the summer of 2017 or 2018, the power went out in for downtown Portland. It was out for like 2 or 3 days, and so we didn't have an elevator. So that was like an eye opener for us. We kind of learned about how crucial an elevator is for a senior property. And this guy is an amputee, and he gets around in a wheelchair, and he's mostly just bound to his apartment, but he had to make it to his methadone clinic. And I learned my maintenance person showed up early in the morning, and the guy asked the maintenance person to carry his wheelchair down the stairs, and he physically crawled down the stairs so he could get to his transportation to make it to his appointment. So these are the sort of things that were eye openers for us. Like, we've got to figure something out to make this work. And so we did the needs assessment, and that gave us a number of like how many people were like really going to be affected. And then I tabulated that, wrote up a report, and sent it, gave it to my boss and said, listen, I really want this to go to Oregon Housing and Community Services. They're the ones who are financing this property in large part, and they need to be made aware that we're in the midst of doing this. I do not want to be on the hook for like we're halfway through this project and alarm bells start going off and the news media comes and says, what the hell are you doing? But I couldn't find any precedent for like how to handle this. So we just had to wing it.
So one of the things that you did do was note the various things that people have to go downstairs for. And those were groceries, laundry.
Right.
I don't know what else. We did this
Sure.
project back at the beginning of the year, so it's been a few months and I've had a few other projects since then, but I'm trying to remember everything.
A lot of people didn't respond to this needs survey. So we had our Manor Management as the property management company. We had their resident services come through and actually knock on doors and get more information. But then when I contacted Peregrine, I handed this information off to them. And when they were assessing whether or not they wanted to take this project on, like, boy, do they want to take this project on or not? I mean, this is like, it's kind of scary. They went and, met with residents and assessed for themselves in a more detail what was going to happen. And there was some conflict for me as the manager. This has to work financially. We can't relocate everybody in the building because it's not being subsidized by HUD. We have to make this work somehow. If we have to, we will relocate people who really need to be relocated, but we have to find a balancing act there. So there was some back and forth that I had with Peregrine, like, listen, what you specialize in and what you're really good in is like taking care of tenants, getting them packed up and moved out. And we need to balance that with the fact that we can't do this for everybody in the building.
And my memory is that based on the needs assessment, you estimated 8 residents were going to need to be temporarily relocated off-site.
Mm-hmm.
And what it came down to was actually 2, only 2 out of the whole project. So that was a huge win as far as I was concerned. This is a picture of Dave and his assistant manager, Kathy, who is now the head manager at Chaucer. Kathy is amazing, a saint, a wonderful human being. But I was wondering if you'd want to talk a little bit about Manor Management, your employer. For me, this was the 6th project I had done with them. The biggest one being Westmoreland's Union Manor out McLaughlin Boulevard, which is 301 units. I also did a 200-unit building in Eugene for them, but they're Dave's boss. I'm just a contractor.
Yeah. Okay. So I have some pertinent things to say about that. Manor Management is relatively small. I describe them as like a mom and pop property management company. They've been around a long time. They're fairly large, actually. But if you guys in the audience, if you're a site manager and you're stuck in this situation and you have to do what I did, you might want to just think really critically about, is your management company going to support you in this? And the great thing about Manor Management is they gave me a lot of autonomy to figure out what to do. I was in close contact with actually the head of the company, but I guess it might have been the equivalent of a portfolio manager. But I've worked for other property management companies and I might have just said, no, thank you. I'm not going to be responsible for this project if I had worked for some of these other companies. So they were, Manor Management is a good supportive company. And so I'll give them a lot of props for that.
And right, Kathy, say something nice about Kathy.
Thank you. And then, so yeah, that's another a lesson here is that had people who were just, everybody involved with this project was very sensitive of the needs of the residents, and the office manager, Kathy, is absolutely fantastic to work with. She was a great partner in our whole team.
So I'm noting on the slide, culture of the building and floor wardens. Do you want to talk about how the floor warden, what do you call that, program works?
Sure. So we don't have 24-hour staff per se at that building, but with HUD properties, there's a stipend, so you can have residents who can be key holders that'll get a $200 a month stipend that doesn't count against their rent. And so we have some folks who are, some people might refer to them as key holders, or we had a night monitor. And we also, we had residents in the building who were sort of saw themselves as team members, who, or you might maybe like proctors, or, but that was also another sort of element that sort of helped build cohesion with the residents to make this work.
You had basically official assigned folks who are there to watch out for the other people who live in the building.
Mhm.
But my memory is that there were also folks who were like, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Kathy, do you need anything? That sort of thing.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We have a culture of good neighbors in the property. And I think that's something that's just has been cultivated at that property for, for many, many years. And definitely something that that is something that I did not create that, or but I saw that culture in that building, and it's something that I've definitely nourished and was very lucky to have to make this project work.
Next slide, please, Nick. Okay, so you touched on this a little bit, but this is where we're supposed to be talking about how the plan came together. And you mentioned the expedited repair. So that was more money paid to the elevator company to please get it done faster. Have all parts in hand before the work started. And all of this, that part at least, I want to lay at the feet of Greg, the head of Manor Management, who was really good about making sure that these pieces happened. We were not going to have the elevator go down if there was any part of the replacement that was not in hand. Also, no work to happen over the holidays. It was supposed to happen in the fall, and it got pushed back until the start of the next year so that we would not be disrupting people's Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever they wanted to be doing. The holidays all bunch up right then. Minimize hotel stays. I like to talk about this project as a relocation where the goal was no relocation. And that was basically just because they were paying for it out of their general fund and didn't have the money to relocate all of the people in the building. So then the project became, how do we keep people safe and comfortable in a situation like that? So Dave did the tenant survey, the assessment of needs, proposed solutions. I'm wondering how much of that was collaborative. I kind of feel like you came to me with a completed concept and menu, and I was like, okay. And I talked to my people and they were like, yes, we can do this. But do you feel like it was actually more of a negotiation than that?
Okay, so to make this project work, we had to assess who needed to. Well, there are people who had to get out of the building. They had to make medical appointments. How do you get someone who can't take the stairs out of a building? And so like we had envisioned, like, what are we going to do? We'll get a chair and put some 2x4s on it, and we'll have two people like carry the chair down, the person sit in the chair. And we were looking around, and there are devices you can get now, which are like motorized evacuation chairs. So the battery powered chairs that you can leave, you have the person you're trying to carry up or down the stairs, you sit them down in the chair. wheel the chair up to the stairs and you can lean it back and there are like treads that'll crawl up and down the stairs. And they work. They don't work great. But they
it
do
takes two people to
definitely takes two
operate
people.
while a third person sits in
So
the
this was something that I had to say, this is an idea we have. Hey, Peregrine, are you willing to have your workers operate these chairs? And again, we're just like, we're in brand new territory. There is no precedent out there. I reached out to other property management companies, Oregon Housing and Community Services, Northwest Pilot Project. Do you have any experience like moving people up and down stairs? Nothing, absolutely nothing. So that's where we did have some back and forth. I mean, Larisa and John from Peregrine, they were very skeptical. You know, there's like, our employees going to get hurt, liability.
Yeah, the thing that was ringing in my head was we're not trained caregivers. So lifting people, moving people, especially disabled folks, elderly folks, we do not have the training in that. So how much can we do reasonably? But it worked out fine.
Right. So again, we didn't have a template, but there's a matter of working together, building trust. And let's figure out, let's take the chair, sit down in the chair. Let's try taking you up and down the stairs, see how this works. And that's how we sort of built confidence and we knew that it was going to work. One other thing is this property has an open atrium. So you can stand in the lobby and look up to skylights in the roof. And the Walsh was the general contractor on the original remodel. And we asked them to come back and put in a hoist and a construction hoist up on the 6th floor that would carry a basket. And we had a general contractor from Walsh. He took apart a shopping cart and turned it into a basket. And we set up a mechanical hoist for doing things like laundry for the residents. We had to set up laundry service for everybody and for shopping, Meals on Wheels. We're like every day someone was operating this hoist and taking things up to the floors for people. And that was another thing that I had to sell to Peregrine and say, hey, that we're going to try this. It's totally experimental. Let's see what we're going to do here. Come play with it. And we, working together, we built each other's comfort levels and it worked out.
Yeah, Dave had panic. I had panic. We both had panic. Maybe it's time we let Mel do some talking. So Mel, Shea, and Peregrine had done a project together. So we were familiar with her work and were huge fans. And it turned out that she and Dave had a relationship also. And so when he said that he was thinking about bringing her on for the elevator project, we were really excited because we wanted to keep working with her. So Mel, do you want to talk about what your panic looked like when Dave reached out to you?
Yeah, thanks, Larisa. Thanks, Dave.
Next slide, please. Thanks, Nick.
I feel like I should be singing a karaoke song with this, to be honest. Yeah, I at the time when this was first brought to my attention, I was working for Communities for Positive Aging, CFPA, as their resident service manager. And I was excited because I like finding solutions to things. I like figuring things out even when they feel complex and difficult. I remember at one time we were like, ooh, that's a lot of stairs. It's going to be like a big workout. Like, should we like propose it to like PSU's like football team and they could get their steps in, you know, like I like being creative and finding solutions. So I was really excited. I had a great relationship with Peregrine. We kind of made the impossible happen at a property that had like an in-house relocation during the pandemic that was very challenging. And then I started off in resident services 10 years ago. And Dave used to deliver pastries to one of our programs. So it was like, so I have this like wonderful relationship with Dave too. And so I said I was excited for it. But then I left CFPA in August, and the project had gotten like pushed back. But then it came about in the beginning of the year, and CFPA's executive director, Amber Kern-Johnson, who's awesome, reached out to me and was like, hey, do you still want to do this? And I was like, I do. So I got hired as an independent contractor to kind of just like take the lead and figure out how we were going to like find a solution.
So do you want to, oh, I guess you answered two of my questions. Let's see, do you want to talk about your partnerships with food pantries and meal suppliers?
Yeah, so I feel like in moments when I'm stressed out or when there's a crisis, I tend, and I don't know if this resonates with any of you, but food's a real comfort to me. And I really recognize the need in a situation like this where like you don't have the residents didn't have the like accessibility to just go to the grocery store every single moment, or you know, maybe they like to go out to dinner a few times a week. And so trying to figure out a way where it's like we can reduce some of those needs. I designed a food pantry on each floor for all the residents. So I just stocked it with kind of like your daily staples, oil, cereal, some sweet treats, pasta, some canned products. And then on each floor, I also put a list of like perishable items too, like eggs, butter, yogurt, milk, juice. And so residents could reach out to me if they needed any of the perishable items, and then the rest was just, it would get restocked every week. And then I also contracted or reached out to this really awesome local nonprofit called Meals on Us, and they provide they mostly provide meals to like unhoused communities, and they have a couple contracts with like different organizations throughout town. But I really appreciated them because they were very detailed in making sure that all dietary needs were met, that everyone felt included. So it was because we had a really vast variety of like food preferences and dietary restrictions. So they were great, and they provided hot meals once a week. And it was this really nice way of just connecting with everyone and being like, thanks for putting up with this headache, because it is a headache. I mean, on a personal note, I appreciated it because I didn't have to go to the gym for 8 weeks, but it was like a real inconvenience. So how can we make people feel seen and appreciated for like the sacrifice they're making, which in the end will be better for everyone. But yeah, they're paying to live there. So and we were guests in their home, and I just really wanted to make sure that they felt seen and validated and appreciated. So that's why I really wanted to make sure that food at least was accessible to them.
So Mel, I feel like you're touching on something that all three of us hold as a really important value in the work that we do, which is treating individuals as individuals with specific needs and not trying to come up with cookie cutter solutions that will apply to everyone, because that, in my experience, doesn't work. And this is how Dave managed the building, and this is how Mel dealt with providing services to the folks in this 6-story building. So just to sort of run with that, what were some other priorities that you had for making sure that the community was served?
Well, I wanted to I'm a people person, and so I made it a point to like meet everybody there and get to know them because I was going to be in their home for 8 weeks. One of the things that I really wanted to, like from previous experience working with like on-site renovations is there's noise, and there can sometimes be like this tension between like the people that are doing the work, the construction workers, and the residents of like, you're inconveniencing me. For whatever reason, we always need to find like the bad guy or the villain. So I really wanted to like quell that and get in front of that right away. So one thing that I had brought up is like, let's get earplugs for everyone, and let's like have like, let's meet your construction crew. And they were really sweet. It was just like 2 of them really, and they were so nice. And
you made a flyer.
and I made a flyer, and I was like, here they are. Don't hesitate to say hi. Also, like, don't talk their ear off about like, your favorite movie, because they're trying to get this done. But let's be familiar with everybody that's a part of this project. And so like in doing that and putting flyers up, kind of like thinking about the small inconveniences that would be happening throughout this time, like I was able to kind of get to know everyone and like assess what their needs were. Some people wanted to be left alone, and that was totally great. Like I appreciate their, being upfront about that. Some people really wanted some community engagement, which then helped me kind of like figure out if we were going to do games or art classes or whatnot. Some people just wanted to talk. There were folks that had like a higher level of needs, in which I leaned more on like my resident service background and like case management to like help navigate things that way. So yeah, it was just very much like meeting people where they were and centering their experience, and then how I navigated forward with how I created programming and just like day-to-day operations.
So looking at this slide, I'm about ready to move to the next one, but I thought I'd just like run through what's on it. So meeting people where they're at, asking people what they need. This is really how we try to achieve an equity focus within Peregrine, at least. But don't assume that people have a thing that they need. Ask. As a business, I always try to work with transparency and accountability. I don't know. Do you have anything you want to say about that? Transparency and accountability? I mean, just being honest with people.
Yeah.
And them sensing that and seeing it goes so far.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there are just some things that I can't do. And so I feel like, I don't like saying like a hard no sometimes, because that feels like it closes the door, but I like to pose questions of like, well, that's not in my wheelhouse of expertise, but like, how can we maybe find a solution for this? Or are there other avenues that we can go to? Like we had a resident who, she really enjoyed like her champagne or her sparkling wine, and wanted to go to the store all the time for it. And like she had some like pretty severe health issues, like and so and it was also somewhat of a liability because she would not stay in her apartment, and she would like often try and walk down the stairs. So that was like a bit of a concern. So
well, and also in my memory, she had serious like internalized shame about the thing that she was trying to get. So she wanted to do it herself when she wasn't physically capable. It's a tricky line to walk.
yeah. And so, instead of just being like a hard no of this, I was like, well, let's set up like a shopping date, and we can like go out and like once a week we can go and do something. Or there's a resident on the floor that like does a run for things. But yeah, I tend to like to be as transparent about everything as possible, because I find that like it, people are smart. They're going to know if you're not being fully honest with them about something. So I guess, does that answer your question?
Oh, totally. But yeah, it also like triggered another thing in my mind, which is that I find that there's kind of in our culture, this sense that it's not okay to be flawed, and we are all just humans trying to muddle through and do the best we can. And I think, recognizing that common humanity in others, being willing to show it in yourself, goes a long way towards building trust from people.
I will say that this project, having worked in social services for a decade, and feeling quite burnt out after the pandemic, definitely did spark some joy and like faith in things again. And I don't know if it was the perfect balance of this property with the tenants who had this really amazing culture. I know Dave spoke of it a bit, but like, it's really amazing to see people care about each other in such a way. And they did. And I do attribute a lot of that to the property management, because they also showed a level of care and respect, like off the bat of like, you know, this is how they were very transparent with their residents. The collaboration that I had with Peregrine, where, you know, we did stick in our lanes of like what our skill set was, but we had no ego about ourselves to be like, well, I don't do that and you don't do that. And so that was really great too, because we all weren't afraid to pick up and support the other, which I think is what made this so successful and why we came in way under budget and under time, is because we really worked together in a really fantastic collaborative way.
So the last line on the slide is help people take ownership of the place where they live. And I think, as you just said, you know, Dave and Kathy really laid the foundation for that. But in the work that you did, how do you think that you built on that?
I mean, everything was resident directed. Like, if I think tried like playing, well, I had attempted to play bingo and I was told I was not doing it the correct way. So I got, you know, I adhered to whatever, you know, version that they wanted. I wasn't trying to force anything on anybody, because like I didn't want to wait, you know, I didn't want to waste anyone's time, or they wanted like a brunch. So we made like a pancake breakfast, and then we made like, and that was really successful. Everyone loved it. So then we made like breakfast burritos. So it was just really listening, and opposed to coming in with like, well, here's what I'm going to do for you. I really tried to center them as like, how can I support you in this experience right now? And yeah, I think it worked really well.
Okay, so now the question that is just like screaming, how do you do bingo wrong? What did you do?
You know, well, apparently free bingo is not, people like to pay. I didn't realize like gambling culture was like so prominent in this building, but I did say like, no, this is free because it's an inconvenience. But then, yeah, just the way that you call things out, the jokes that I thought were funny, like B12 is a vitamin, was like, did not go over well. So I really grew in my bingo calling. Yeah.
Nick, would you give us the next slide, please? Okay, so this, you've talked a lot about these things, but maybe you could get into some specifics. I know that there were some immediate tenant issues that you had to deal with and people who needed a lot of one-on-one from you. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean,
Stories.
I had, well, prior to this project, I was visiting my partner's family and got bit by one of their dogs. So I had to get like 8 stitches on my face. So when I came into this project, I had still stitches, and I ended up befriending a resident who was living on the same floor as me, who also had stitches. So we kind of bonded over this experience, and I helped her take her to the hospital to get them removed. But it was kind of things of that nature where like sometimes people don't like to ask for help, but they clearly might need an extra hand in something. So it was just figuring out how to navigate and see, like, listen to like what they said or what they didn't say, which then allowed me to like call on like past experience or reach out to like partners or colleagues and get like a higher level of care for some of these folks. So yeah,
Well, I'm remembering that there was a woman that you took to the hospital.
Oh yeah, that was the stitches. Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, I don't think that you expected that that's what you were going to be doing on one of your first days.
You know, I love an adventure, and I feel like working in community, there's always going to be something. So, yeah, but I've worked in this field and in the service industry for a very long time. So it's hard to rattle me a little bit with like, I'm pretty good about reacting or meeting the call. Yeah. I just felt really grateful that she trusted me to take her to the hospital, because that is a very like personal and private thing. And so I feel like that was a real gift to receive, that she trusted me enough to like help her in her care.
I think we can go forward to the next slide. Okay, so here we bring in our Zoom friend, John. Oh, and actually, if you go back, so this is Howie from Walsh and Tom, the maintenance worker at Chaucer Court, and that is a shopping cart on a winch that Howie has cut the legs off of and attached 6 stories up inside the atrium. This is the thing that we used daily to get groceries up 6 floors. Okay, thanks, Nick. Hi, John.
Hello.
How you feeling?
Okay.
Okay, so questions for you. John was the lead from Peregrine on this project. So he was boots on the ground, working there every day, running up and down 6 flights of stairs, also not going to the gym. Do you want to talk about what your average day was like?
Yeah. So we staffed 2 people every day, Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 4:30. And Saturdays we were there from 10 to 3. And we needed 2 of us because while we were doing laundry, it was what one floor a day. We would do all the laundry, and then on Friday we actually tried to do 2 floors. And a funny thing that happened with that is we had started with the 6th floor thinking they would have the highest need for laundry because they were the furthest away from the laundry facilities in the basement. They turned out to be like the floor that used our services the least, and the bottom 2 floors ended up like totally slamming us with laundry. But one of us would be occupied with laundry for much of the day, frequently. And then all of these tasks needed 2 of us there. The stair climber, if we needed to give someone a ride in that, someone had to operate it, and another person had to be spotter on it, basically. And the winch, we had to have both the person who sent the winch up, and a person up on the floors in the atrium to say, stop, and attach it to the atrium wall and get stuff out of the cart. Plus, the person who wasn't doing laundry did a lot of sort of like touring around the building, walking the stairwell, seeing if there was someone navigating the stairs and having difficulty, possibly needing assistance. I spent a lot of time in the atrium lobby, just waiting to see if I could be helpful. We had signs posted that reminded people we were there to help carry stuff up for them, or just accompany them on the stairs if they wanted to walk them. We definitely weren't above offering an arm to steady somebody. And our phone number was on on the sign that reminded people of that. So we would get calls throughout the day. Please come to my apartment and help me with my bag to get down to the street, that kind of thing.
John, can I just interrupt? Since
Yeah.
you kind of started by talking about this, I was wondering if you could get into a little more of the nuts and bolts of how the laundry worked. What was the process there?
So Dave had ordered laundry bags for every tenant that were like mesh, and they had metal tags on them with the unit number stamped so that the bags could be thrown in with the laundry. And so we would gather all the laundry first thing in the morning and bring it down in the well, either we'd carry it down if it was a small enough amount, or we would use the hoists to get it down. And then we'd have to walk it on down into the basement where the laundry facility was. And because the bag was able to go in with the laundry, there was very low risk of mixing up anyone's laundry with somebody else's. I think it happened one time during the project. We returned their laundry and someone like held up a garment that was very clearly not theirs. But we were able to figure that out, obviously.
Would the laundry get returned as each load was completed, or did you do same as in the morning and it was all at once at the end of the day?
I think that our tendency was to sort of return it as it got finished, if that was practical, depending on how busy we were. Wednesday was a day that I just happened to not schedule myself to work, and it was a day that everything was going on. So I missed how busy things got those days, but store-to-door deliveries happened on that day, which that's a volunteer organization that grocery shops for seniors. They would bring deliveries, and Mel's hot meal program happened on Wednesdays. So there was a whole lot of us working the hoist and delivering things to people's doors. And on top of that, we had the laundry to get back. So anyway, yeah, I think that when I did laundry, I tended to, when I finished, you know, loads would go into the dryer at approximately the same time and finish at approximately the same time. So those loads I would take up at once, and then I would finish the rest of it and take it up.
So when you first heard about this project, did you experience any panic? And what were your first thoughts? What were your concerns?
My first thought was, this sounds like a great way to get exercise, which it totally was. And I mean, really, I was pretty excited to be involved from the beginning because, as has been mentioned, we had been working a job that was really tough, and it was an occupied rehab. And I knew from experience working with manor management that it was going to be a very different situation, that it was going to be well organized and well thought through, and that we were going to be helping people instead of imposing on them. That was a huge difference. The opportunity to have people say thank you instead of go away was that was appealing. What scared me was I didn't understand sort of fundamentally, how can you do this to a building full of seniors and disabled folks? How can you take away their elevator? What happens if there's a fire or earthquake? That was a concern that Dave kind of immediately quelled by saying, well, the elevator always goes offline in that kind of emergency anyway, and people shelter in place and get evacuated. So that helped set my mind at ease. And then, yeah, the stair climber, it's intimidated me quite a bit. And maybe it wasn't until we took rides on it, and were able to like stop and take our hands off the machine with one of us sitting in it. We didn't do this with tenants, obviously, on the stairs, and have it just sit there. That's when I felt like, oh, this is a pretty safe machine. Yeah. So, but I guess those were my main concerns. Yeah.
Nick, I'm wondering if we could have, there was a slide for John, I think just one, just so we could see it. Oh, yeah, there we go. Right. So, yep. The daily routine involved groceries and laundry largely, and just whatever anybody happened to need. Operating the lift chair. There's a slide down the road where you can see a picture of the lift chair, because I know you're all curious. This is the atrium hoist, which looks super janky, but it worked. And then, yes, people who were excited to go up and down 6 flights of stairs every day. This is what I was asking of my employees. Next slide, please. So these are a couple of flyers that John made and posted in the building. So you can see what kinds of things we were using as communication with the tenants. Trying to keep it light and, you know, keep people's spirits up. That was largely Mel's job, but we helped. Is John still on as audio? John, do you want to say anything about your slide here?
Well, you know, I really do kind of feel like we were brought on partly to function as providers of social cohesion. It more than any other project, that felt like more than a mere side effect of our presence. I mean, I feel like we always kind of do that, but at this job, it felt like it was part of the job, to bring people together, to stop and chat with people, because I mean, that was one of the risks outside of people falling on the stairs. There's just this risk of people being stuck on their floor in their unit for, you know, what we thought was going to be 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. The possibility of a sense of just terrible isolation, you know, that was a threat. And really the opposite kind of happened. One of the things we thought we were going to have to forego at the beginning of the project was the weekly coffee hours that the building hosts on Friday mornings. And instead, like, tenants really wanted to make a priority of it. So they came down, and they just, you know, they set aside the time necessary to make a very slow walk back up to their unit after having some coffee hour time together.
Well, and Dave, doesn't Kathy have a tradition of making like enchiladas or something? So yeah, Kathy makes enchiladas once a month. That kind of stuff that gets the people together and seeing each other was really important to maintain. I didn't mention, but back when we had the picture of Dave and Kathy dancing together, there is a dance class that takes place every Tuesday afternoon in the basement of Chaucer Court. And it's taught by a former drag queen who really knows his stuff. And all you have to do is show up with some dry goods. It's a food donation to pay for the class. And yeah, since we stopped working in February on this project, John Ross and I have been showing up every Tuesday and getting dance classes, and it's still just really fun. But I think that also there's a tendency when a group faces adversity to come together, and the community spirit that we were all really aware of and focused on trying to maintain, we were able to harness that, I think. And I don't know. It was just a glorious, glorious project. Next slide, please, Nick. Okay, that's me. Yeah, so avoiding relocation was the relocation plan. When Dave reached out to me, I don't think he understood that I had already done 5 other projects for his employer. Because I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm your relocation person. And he was like, well, I'm going to want you to submit a bid and a budget. And I was like, no. But yes, I did all that. And then, yeah, he told me that I had to recalibrate the budget because I had a math error. And I was like, thank you, Dave, for pointing that out. Because yeah, it was pretty big. But in the end, you know, figuring that 8 people were going to have to be temporarily relocated off site, as well as us providing all of these like labor intensive services all day long with 3 staff from my company plus Mel, the budget was $90,000 for just less than a month's work. That's a lot of money. And so, yeah, we finished in the elevator was finished in 6 weeks. The worst case scenario that we were told was 10, to expect 10. So that was really exciting. And the budget was 90K and we came in under 35. So win-win, win-win, win-win. And just like a really happy group of people at the building. Yeah.
We had a senior prom as our final farewell to the project, which was, I mean, there wasn't that much dancing, but yeah, we had a big buffet and whatnot. It was great.
The food was really good. And yes, this is the lift chair and our employee George operating it at the top and an invisible, probably Sage or John at the other end. It has treads like a tank to go downstairs. It's fascinating. Next slide, please. Okay, that's us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to us talk for an hour and plus. We do not have any more keychains, but there are notebooks, a few remaining. There's some tote bags in the back of the room. I think I have the best swag at this convention, and you are at a convention, so take some swag home. We have a website. You can read more about other projects we've done there, and you can reach out to us there if you would like to. Does anybody have any questions? Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
What was your timeline after the needs assessment to have a plan of communicating with residents about like what the plan was, how long the process was going to take, making that feel at.
Yeah, so you know, most of the work that I do, that my company does, is governed by the URA, the Uniform Relocation Act and HUD. And so there are guidelines in place for all those things. And this was not a URA project. So we had flexibility about when and how to give people notification. But in this case, I'm thinking it was a couple months before. And so I haven't really talked much about the 2 folks that were relocated, but one of them, he said, I want to go visit my brother in San Diego while all this is happening. And he was one of the people we were most worried about because he got dialysis 3 times a week and was not super good about taking care of himself. But we wanted to support him in his choice. So I bought a plane ticket. And I coordinated with his family that there was going to be somebody to pick him up at the airport and that he was going to be able to attend his dialysis sessions. And then Kathy ended up stepping up and like having to reach out to his doctor in San Diego because he wasn't getting his prescription transferred. It was a bunch of stuff. We had to do a bunch of stuff. But yeah, like he would not have had the ability to come up with his own plan and for us to support it if we did not give him advance notice. And he had reached out and said, you know, I want to come visit. Is that going to be okay? And they were like, yeah. So we were able to do that. I'm a pretty big believer in giving people lots of notice and letting them make their own plans. As long as they're reasonable, we are here to support that. I don't know if that's a specific enough answer for you though. Yes. Yeah, I mean, Mel or Dave, do you want to talk about this? Because I would answer that for me and my company, what we do is we work with individual caregivers. So if a person has a caregiver, we try to keep them informed and part of the process through the whole thing, but
Yeah, I mean, we had a few residents that did have care providers and would come and we'd help coordinate with them and let them know. We didn't really reach out to APS too much. There was maybe like one or two instances where like a higher level of like care intervention, but I tend just with like the network of and support that I had through like CFPA, which was actually really fantastic because CFPA was a newer organization that was merged between the Giving Tree Northwest, which is resident services, and the Hollywood Senior Center. So we had a ton of like elder adult services already ingrained within CFPA. So it was kind of, which I think also is what made like this a really ideal partnership, is because they already understood the need for that community. And then based on my experience working with elder adult communities, I knew like who to go to downtown in Portland, who, you know, so we had a bit of a built-in network, which then we didn't have to necessarily rely so much on like bringing in other organizations like adult protective services for things. And oh, pardon me. I missed, yeah. Yeah.
But I do want to respect like individual rights, not service.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm feel that, you know, like all of the stuff that each community is something different, but I just wanted to share that as a potential option for people, you know. to
Thank you.
collaborate,
Yeah.
you know, with that. And then my other question was, like the vote test.
no. That is a really good question and we probably should have. Also, Meals on Wheels was part of the services
Yes.
that were regularly provided to the.
I reached out to Meals on Wheels ahead of time and tried to say, hey, like, inform them of the project. Northwest Pilot Project, I contacted them. It's like, hey, do you have any resources? Can you communicate to your case managers? This is happening. Please communicate, at your staff meetings, let everybody know this is going to happen. One of gripe is I reached out to the police, the fire departments, and emergency services. And boy, I had a hard time communicating to those guys. I went down to the police station, delivered a memo, and asked to get called back. I never did. I went to my local, the fire station up by PSU. This is happening, you guys. You need to know there's not going to be an elevator. Please, do you understand this? And it took a lot of rattling cages just to get like someone to acknowledge that. So that's a bit of a gripe.
But I think they would have an emergency, they would be able to just, you know, fix that thing.
Oh, the medical alert button.
Yes, and have those services come in. So I just wanted to share that as potential collaborative, you know, sports.
You must have folks there that have medical alert buttons.
There's a few, actually. This property has, they have pull chains in the apartments. The new model is going to these buttons that people carry with them, but it's an older property, so there's pole chains in the bedrooms and bathrooms.
Yeah, no, thank you for your points. Those are excellent. Dave, I totally skipped over when we were talking about what we were going to talk about today. You mentioned that Bobby Weinstock had been influential in your thinking about how to approach management and services together. Do you want to talk a little bit about Bobby, since he passed and we loved him?
Sure. Bobby Weinstock was a significant part of Northwest Pilot Project. And, you know, when I was envisioning this, he definitely was an inspiration. He was, you know, as a leader, he did these housing partnership work groups, which I don't think have happened post-COVID, but it was, you know, mostly downtown properties, but it was Portland, open to all of Portland, and they organized get-togethers where case managers would meet with property managers. And the idea is to build a culture where we're in the same boat and we're working together to provide safe and secure housing for people. And so that's the, you know, that there's that idea of like working as a team rather than I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. And that was really important to me.
I also realized that we have completely neglected to mention in all of our talk about Manor Management being the management company that manages the building. It's actually owned by the Union Labor Retirement Association, and they are wonderful because they support Manor Management and us in the work that we do. And they've just been really great to work for. Any other questions? John Ross on Zoom, do you have any final words you want to say?
Well, I mean, I guess a story from the job that sticks with me was you know, one of the things that happened when we were going around offering help to people is tenants would say, oh, you don't need to worry about me, but I am worried about my neighbor. And sorry, choking up. There was on the 6th floor, there was one old fellow that everyone was worried about. And because he really liked to come down and have coffee in the atrium lobby and like write in his journal, didn't really talk to people much, but he really shuffled around slow. People didn't think, you know, he was going to be getting around, but he completely was ended up getting around. He wouldn't just make it down the stairs to the lobby and sit and rest and then back up to his unit, but he ended up doing like walking around every floor on his way down, checking in with everything. He completely maintained his lifestyle. It was really sweet. It was also really sweet how many people were concerned for him and understood his need for connection, even though he was someone who kind of stood or sat to the side and watched instead of necessarily taking part in chatting so much. Yeah, there was also a guy on the 6th floor who wasn't able to take the stairs, but he had a tradition of making cakes for the Friday coffee hour, and he continued to do so, and he just had us pick them up and take them down. Little things like that, just, I don't know. It was a really sweet job, a great community to work with, and a great team.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Any final questions? Should we adjourn? Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, and thank you to Nick. Excellent work on the AV tech.